Athletes are all about the routine. People, too, and I'd include myself in that category as well. So the question here on this Wednesday is, what happens when their routine varies? As the Cardinals, for the first time here at Cards Camp 2019, practicing in the morning. So good morning here from State Farm Stadium. Grialou, Mike Jurecki, and, Big Red in the house as well. Always good to have Big Red, and you're still wearing that number 1, huh? Someone else wears that. No? Okay. We're still working on that here because
1.5.
Big Red, though, has seniority. He's been here a little bit longer. Though, who's more talented, MJ? Who's more talented?
They both are in their professions.
That's true. And with that,
see you later,
I think we've lost Big Red here on this Monday morning. Again, the Cardinals, for the first time since training camp opened last week, practicing in the morning. A little bit different, but in fairness, MJ, this is a team that typically, historically, does practice during the season in the morning. They're on the field at about 11 o'clock.
Yeah, and I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think we got like 4 or 5 early starts this year. Obviously, when you're playing,
I think I remember there were 5 10 a.m., 11 a.m. starts.
And obviously when you play the AFC North, and you got 2 games there, and then obviously, you got some East Coast games against the NFC East. So, and they're going to be outside on Friday. Now, the practice on Friday is not open to the public, and that's going to be at 8:20 a.m., which is 11:20 East Coast time. And I thought Kingsbury brought up a really good point about when it comes to the return guys, you got to make sure you look for the sun. So
wide receivers as well.
Wide receivers looking for the ball. Obviously, the Cardinals play in a dome, but they will play outdoors at certain points this year.
Yeah, so continuing coverage of Cards Camp 2019, a special edition of Cards Cover 2. 14 open practices, including today, tomorrow, and then the red and white practice on Saturday. Go to azcardinals.com/Cards Camp for all the information on the number of open practices. But yeah, today and tomorrow, doing it in the morning, so we'll kind of see if it is still as crisp, as fluid as we've seen so far. Though the one thing I know Coach will definitely want to correct, and that is the pre-snap penalties. He broke down the team after yesterday's practice, which was seen on azcardinals.com, and that was what he spotlighted. Too many false starts, too many offsides, and that's a killer, especially when they're working in late game situations as they were yesterday, and all of a sudden you're backpedaling 5 yards or you're giving the opponent 5 yards.
Yeah, I mean, if you're shuffling personnel in and out, that's going to happen because obviously the quarterback steps out of the huddle and you can have X amount of players in the huddle. But pre-snap penalties, those are mental errors. And maybe it's just because they don't have a cadence and they're using the clap. But obviously they've been doing it long enough since the offseason with Kyler Murray and Brett Hundley. So pre-snap penalties, they're inexcusable. Now you don't want to be sitting at 1st and 15 when you're manageable, 1st and 10, and if you could pick up a few downs. I will say this, though. Normally in training camp, when we start to get to the, after maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th day, usually the defense is ahead of the offense because the offense obviously learning a new system, a new scheme. Defensively, a lot of these guys prefer to play a 3-4. But I thought yesterday, Murray got off to a slow start. He was 0 for 3, and then I want to say he went like 12 of 15, and then he settled down a little bit. But I thought the defense really controlled the first part of practice yesterday.
Well, and that was from the get-go, as there was the first quote-unquote scuffle of training camp early on in practice between Damiere Byrd and Robert Alford. It was over very, very quickly. Larry Fitzgerald kind of played peacemaker. Kingsbury was asked about it earlier this morning and said just 2 guys competing. It's going to happen when you go one-on-one. And he brought up the Major League Baseball brawl between the Reds and Pirates last night. That is how you really do it if you want to talk about a fight. But again, it started and it quickly ended.
Well, and if Bruce Arians was still here, the entire team would be running gassers, and that makes the other guys not happy about that. Now, Pat Tillman, Tilly, and Flagstaff, he was thrown off the field multiple times by Larry Marmee because Pat was playing a little bit beyond the whistle, and Pat was thrown out of practices. So there's a way to practice, and at the end of the day, you're going against the Cardinals versus Cardinals. But I get it. They've probably been going at it since off-season workouts, and Robert Alford, I think he's been a nice addition. It's one of those situations where he's a fierce competitor. I think he's been under the radar here because so much focus is on the draft class and obviously losing Patrick Peterson. So Alford, again, he's got a chip on his shoulder based on where he played college football, and maybe he thought he should have been a higher pick, even though he was a guy that was worthy of picking where he was. So I like the addition of Robert Alford. He brings a little juice to this defense in the secondary.
Well, we had a chance to talk to him on Cards Cover 2 not long after he signed early in the offseason. Very talkative, very humble, but then a light switch goes on when he hits the field because he is just as talkative, not afraid to trash talk. And there were a couple of plays yesterday in practice, one in Pacific, as they were working on late-game situations, and Alford picked off Kyler Murray on a pass that was intended for Damiere Byrd that ended a late-game situation. The situation was this: down 20-14 with 50 seconds left and 2 timeouts, and the first-team offense stalled because Alford had a red zone interception.
Yeah, and we've seen Kyler Murray over the last couple of days, and again, they get paid too, and I think Vance Joseph is throwing the kitchen sink at him. We're seeing, a safety blitz off the edge where it was DJ Swearinger, and I thought the offensive line had pretty good protection. I think Shipley popped out. Murray was able to get rid of the ball. But he has a tendency sometimes to float the ball in the air, and he definitely underthrew the receiver in Byrd, and that Alford was able to get that interception. That's something he obviously has to work on.
Kyler Murray, though, did have his moments in practice yesterday. And the one thing I've seen from Murray, and everyone talks about the accuracy, the arm strength, and the footwork, but his decision-making skills. He is quick with his progression, scanning the field, looking at the first, second, and third reads, all within a matter of seconds. And you can't see his eyes because he's wearing the visor, but just the way his head quickly turns from left to right or right to left, he is certainly reading what is open very, very fast.
Well, I think he's benefited from this offense, meaning you're getting rid of the ball less than 2.5 seconds. They're also running these short crossing routes, and so getting rid of the ball is going to help that. Now, there are times when he's going to have to sit in the pocket and make some throws down the field, allow the receivers to get into their break to come back to the football. So I think it's a sense where he's padding the ball like Donovan McNabb did, and you just want to make sure there's no tendencies there where he pads it the last time he's going to throw it. But I would agree with you. That's a good observation. He does go through his progressions, and it's boom, 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 get rid of the ball.
Yeah, he saw on one particular play a corner blitz, which was Byron Murphy, and he found tight end Ricky Seals-Jones open for a nice play. And then Murray showed his nice touch, throwing a ball over the defender's outstretched hand, which happened to be Zeke Turner, and then found into the arms of Larry Fitzgerald. So you're seeing different ways of a quarterback can affect an offense with his eyes, with his arms, and with his legs.
Yeah, and I noticed that Cliff Kingsbury had a conversation with Larry after that play. Now, Larry had to leave his feet. He had to jump up, double hand on the ball, and he caught it going down to the field. I wonder if they wanted him to run a different route. But one thing you see coming to the sidelines is Larry Fitzgerald and Kyler Murray continue to talk. And even though they've had 1,000 reps together, and when Larry was moved to the slot back in 2013 with Bruce Arians, you remember before practice he would be with the wide receivers coach Kevin Garver, because he wanted to make sure where he lined up. Larry doesn't like mental errors in practice, and he leads by example. So a lot of conversation going with Kyler Murray and Larry Fitzgerald. And just to piggyback on what I said yesterday, we hear some of these veteran guys around the league, Julio Jones, are not going to play in the preseason. Now, a little bit different. He's dealing with the contract. They have 5 preseason games, which is coming up tomorrow night, Falcons and Broncos. And I talked to Larry in the locker room, and he said, I would like to play a few snaps with Kyler Murray in the preseason because I play with a lot of quarterbacks. He said, I want to be on the same page with him. So you're seeing the veteran guy with the young quarterback, and the young quarterback knows where he should be, and Larry's got to learn that.
Well, as we take a look at the wide receiver drills right now here at the start of practice, one of those receivers who did look good early in camp and then got some run with the first team yesterday is Kevin White, number 18, as he is probably needs to show maybe more than some other receivers just to open up some eyes and make this team, because if 7 are going to be kept as far as receivers, the question is who, and we know Kevin White so far has not shown that he is going to play on special teams, so now all of a sudden that limits his versatility, which when you're talking about towards the bottom end of the roster, you need guys to be able to play more than one position, or in this case, more than one offense and special teams.
Well, to me, it's twofold. First of all, the Cardinals were looking for an ex-receiver. This is before the draft, and obviously he has the physical attributes. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. They were impressed with him early on, and then he was inconsistent, and he has been running with the ones. But I mentioned a couple guys here, Jameer Byrd, Farrell Cooper. They're going to make it based on special teams, but they also could add at wide receiver. May they X each other out. Trent Sherfield, he plays on teams. So I think Kevin White right now could be on the outside looking in, but we're early in camp. We have yet to play a preseason game. The injuries occur. A guy can, injure his hammy. He's out 4 to 6 weeks, so plenty of time. Kevin White, Hakeem Butler, Andy Isabella, they're going to play a ton in the preseason, so let's let it play out. But he's flashed, inconsistent, and now he looks like he's back to the guy that they initially signed.
One other wide receiver as we talk about here on this special edition of Cards Cover 2 from State Farm Stadium. It is open practice number 6 here, Cards Camp 2019, and it's a receiver that we have talked about for a while now, and that is KeeSean Johnson. He continues to make plays, and yesterday's practice was no different. Not with the first team, but working with the second team and Brett Hundley. But Johnson had 2 touchdown catches, including a 65-yarder to end practice, as he basically just ran right past Nate Brooks, and Hundley found Johnson in stride. Once that play was done, Kingsbury took off his headset, the horn blew, and practice ended. And Johnson, once again, right there at the forefront of people's minds as far as who is standing out each and every practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising that he dropped to the 6th round. I'll say this, though. I mean, I love his route running. He's very smooth when it comes to his breaks. He comes back to the ball when a quarterback's throwing to him. And that play you're referring to, they were in the 2-minute drill. It was 4th and 10. And Brett Hundley was able to find him down the sidelines, maybe a 65-yard touchdown pass, as you mentioned. So I give KeeSean Johnson a lot of credit. He had an early drop in practice, and he bounced back, and that's what good receivers do.
Hundley called it a walk-off afterwards when he met the media, and in praising Johnson, Hundley's quote, "Fights for the ball, he has great hands." And again, this is a 6th-round draft pick, the 3rd of the 3 wide receivers selected, someone that perhaps when he was drafted, it's like, okay, maybe not right away, maybe later in the season, or maybe it's a red shirt potentially, or maybe it's a practice squad. When you're a 6th-round draft pick, the odds are stacked even higher against you, but that hasn't been the case so far.
No, and maybe because they ran a 4.6. I mean, we all put so much emphasis on the 40 time, and Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald, they didn't run 4.3s. Guys have what they call game speed. If somebody's chasing you, you run a lot faster. Look at Larry Fitzgerald in the Super Bowl. Look at Larry Fitzgerald and that pass from Carson Palmer in the NFC playoff game. I mean, guys are chasing you. You're going to get there. So I'm thoroughly impressed with him, and it's not like he's just flashed. This is what's happening in the offseason, and it's carrying over to training camp. And we always say, we'll see when they put the pads on. Well, he isn't slowing down, I can tell you that.
More offensive discussion as towards the middle of the field, the running backs working with running backs coach James Saxon and doing a drill that I think a lot of people expect to see happen in the regular season, and that is catching the ball out of the backfield, specifically David Johnson, something we did not see a lot of, if any. Last season, there were some cases, but maybe you could count them on one hand. But in this offense, and Kingsbury brought it up earlier this morning, that they want to be able to play to Johnson's strengths, which is not just run the ball, but utilizing him as a pass catcher.
And he's been lining up a ton in the slot. And yesterday they actually had 2 running backs in the backfield, and that's when Swearinger came off a blitz. And Murray was able to get rid of the ball real quick on a screen pass. Now, I would say when you're watching that running back drill, the 4 guys that look the most fluid are the top 4 guys, and that's David Johnson. Chase Edmonds is having a really good camp. Looks like he has that explosion that we got a chance to see vaguely last year. TJ Logan's improved in catching the football, number 22. And then DJ Foster, this is a guy that can do a lot of different things: run between the tackles, catch a screen pass, play on special teams. So I really think they got a good top four. Obviously, David Johnson's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, and Johnson's skill set as a receiver, unique, according to Kingsbury. His quote this morning, as far as Johnson's receiving ability, looks that natural, can run real routes, do different things, has great hands. He's unique. It definitely adds a different element to your offense, which got everyone thinking, well, why didn't we see it last year? And can Johnson resort back to his 2016 production? And again, as you said it, if healthy, then the answer is absolutely he can at least make that a goal as far as 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards.
And maybe we're just spoiled because, he had, close to 1,400 yards last year. Now, not 18 to 2,020 touchdowns, and that's what he had in 2016. And maybe that was Arians' offense, and obviously a veteran quarterback in Carson Palmer. But this team, we talk about it all the time. We like what we see from Murray. I mean, he's definitely ahead of the curve. There's going to be some growing pains, but really this offense is going to be predicated on the offensive line and the running game. If they can have that 1-2 combo of protection, because I think when we look at the Cardinals' offensive line on paper, they're much better run blockers than they are pass protection. Now you're going to say, well, the Cardinals are going to throw the ball a lot this year. The key is get rid of the ball less than 2.5 seconds. The line protects Murray. Because David Johnson, I told you last year, I went back and watched film. He didn't have any creases, no lanes. He was getting tackled at his ankles at the line of scrimmage. And Adrian Peterson told me a long time ago, even when he got here, was if I get tackled in the backfield or any running back gets tackled in the backfield, that's on the offensive line. And that could be just a missed assignment. So the offensive line, that's where it all starts. And then obviously, David Johnson, if they can get that going, then I think Murray will take a ton of pressure off him and the offense as a whole.
Special edition of Cards Cover 2 here as we continue to provide coverage of Cards Camp 2019 here at State Farm Stadium. A good crowd on hand as well for a morning practice. Again, the Cardinals will be on the practice field Thursday morning as well, and then the red and white practice at 1 o'clock on Saturday. That's always a big crowd and always a little bit more intense as well. Cardinals, as you can see, in pads, scheduled to be in pads tomorrow as well, as we kind of look at the defense and some things that stood out to us about practice yesterday. And just looking at the linebackers, we talked about the news of the day on Tuesday was the fact that the Cardinals added an outside linebacker, and Andre Branch. Well, what we didn't talk about, and I was talking with one of the assistant coaches during practice yesterday, is he's very familiar with this defense. He was with Vance Joseph in Miami in 2016. Assistant linebackers coach Charlie Bullen, who was with the Dolphins previously before landing with the Cardinals. So it doesn't surprise anyone that Branch was getting some first-team reps yesterday and only hours after signing.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Chandler Jones and Terrell Suggs, they're going to be the 1-2 guys. Now, I think Chandler's more of a 3-down linebacker, meaning he doesn't come off the field. I'm curious to see what Vance is going to do. I would flip these guys because when you break the huddle, you got a savvy 17-year veteran who's going to beat you with technique and a bull rush, and then you got Jones, who's more of a finesse guy where he can get there, tackle for losses. So it'll be interesting to see, but they're looking for somebody that can be a rotation guy. The good news is Brooks Reed is practicing. He's getting some reps, and Branch now can give them some options. So right now, I think you're going to keep 4 on the roster because I think you're going to keep 5 inside linebackers. We kind of went through that. So Branch and Brooks Reed, and I think Dennis Gardeck has shown enough where he can play inside. Maybe slide him out, but right now they want him to focus on one area.
And Dante Booker, number 51, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Ohio State. The connections with linebackers coach Bill Davis, who was at Ohio State. I'm a big fan of his. The other name that I brought up is Pete Robertson, the former Texas Tech Red Raider, who was at Tech when Kingsbury became the head coach in 2013. That familiarity, it's not going to win you a starting spot or a roster spot, but it is going to get your foot in the door. And then it's a question of, okay, what do you do when you're here? And Robertson, I'll say it again, you watch him in pass rush drills or 11-on-11, and his speed off the line of scrimmage coming off the edge is something that is a little eye-opening, especially when you're at field level.
Well, I mean, go back to off-season workouts. when Terrell Suggs wasn't there, and I think that was the agreement. He's going to be there for certain parts, and obviously he was there for the mandatory minicamp. Pete Robinson was getting those reps. I mean, Brooks Reed, he wasn't practicing. He was still coming off an injury from last year, and they didn't want to push him. So Robertson, he was getting first-team reps. And, again, that's what you have to do because, it could be an equipment issue. It could be a guy that needs to come out for a play. You got to have a rotation there. Obviously, we're all going to rely on Chandler Jones and Suggs, but you need other players, not to say they're going to play 50 snaps a game, maybe 25 or 30.
The one player who was not on the field yesterday, Tremaine Brock Sr., is on the practice field here today, so I'm guessing that he had a vet day off, and with him not on the field, we saw a little bit more of a rotation as far as cornerbacks, and Chris Jones, Dietrich Nichols getting some run as well. And Nichols, I know, someone that we talked about as far as in the offseason heading into training camp, but hasn't gotten a lot of attention, a lot of love so far. 6 practices, I should say, into training camp.
Well, I think they, obviously felt comfortable enough because, you're wondering who's going to replace Patrick Peterson. Well, they drafted Murphy, Chris Davis, and Dietrich Nichols. He doesn't do anything great, but he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and he's just a guy that it's great depth. He's going to get a chance to play in the preseason, but there's a reason why the Cardinals had him on the roster last year.
Yeah, as we continue.
Chris Jones, it's just a matter of time. I mean, obviously, when you draft a guy in the second round, he's going to get an opportunity. But Chris Jones, I think he's earned the right to be in that conversation, and he does have more experience. Again, though, when you draft a guy in the second round, he's likely going to be active on game day.
Well, and you talk about it, and I'll steal your phrase, you flood the position. You have Patrick Peterson, Robert Alford, Byron Murphy, but when you lose the Peterson for 6 weeks, the question is, okay, what do you do? Who steps up? And you keep throwing different guys. You work in different guys, different combinations to see who works well with one another. As Marcus Robertson, the defensive backs coach, huddles up the DBs over at the 10-yard line. They're getting coached, they're getting instructed, and now it's on them to show up on film and make sure that they're a part of this team when 2019 rolls around.
Yeah, and another guy, I think he wears number 27, that's Josh Shaw.
Correct.
Josh Shaw, he could play free safety, he could play corner, he can play nickel. Now, you don't hear a lot about him, but that's another guy that has position flexibility, and if the Cardinals are going to play a lot of 3 corners versus 3 safeties, he may get a chance to play a little bit, maybe more of a special teams player if he makes the roster.
Yeah, Shaw listed as a defensive back, getting some safety run as well, especially with DJ Swearinger still not on the practice field, and he is still not quite ready to go. As we take a look at the news of the day, no specific injury updates from head coach Cliff Kingsbury this morning, although he did say that all guys were, quote, pretty close. He was asked about Chad Williams, the wide receiver who has not been on the practice field in the last few days. He's dealing with a lower body soft tissue issue, and that's the one thing. As a former third-round draft pick, people have been waiting for Chad Williams to step up, basically do something. Because he hasn't done much so far in his career. And if you're not on the practice field, if you're dealing with an injury, it makes it much more difficult for a new coaching staff to evaluate. And that's what Kingsbury said. They haven't seen a ton, to quote the head coach.
Yeah, and he's been disappointing. And, you look at the numbers. If they keep 7, I don't see him in the top 7 now. Maybe he gets a chance to play in the preseason. Somebody else will go after him. But you look back, they drafted him in the 3rd round out of Grambling, and obviously that's a big step to play in the National Football League. He flashed maybe early, didn't do a whole lot last year when he had a golden opportunity because of the wide receiver lack of depth. So I think he's on the outside looking in. Obviously it's early, but, he just hasn't been able to practice in the offseason. And, listen, Alex Gibbs, a great offensive line coach for the Denver Broncos, he always said, I need 16 national anthems from you, meaning when we do the national anthem, I need you in uniform for that game. And unfortunately, it's hard to get on the field when you're not practicing.
As you look at the quarterback wide receiver drills, and Larry Fitzgerald out for a route and attempted to tackle special teams coordinator and assistant head coach Jeff Rodgers. And Coach Rodgers saw it coming, and Fitz missed.
That's got to be your first.
Fitz went on the ground. Rodgers did not. But to my recollection, that might be the first time I think Fitz has attempted a tackle, because typically, as Ron Wolfley likes to say, you got to keep your head on a swivel when number 11 is around and you're one of the coaches or someone walking the sidelines, because as we've seen, Fitz has gotten Wolf. Not once,
well,
but
that's
a couple
not
of
saying
times.
a lot.
That's true. It's a stationary
target. You look
target.
at Jeff Rogers, nothing against Wolf. Wolf will tell you, he's a guy that probably should be exercising more. Jeff Rogers is more athletic. He read his keys, head on a swivel. Larry wasn't able to pull it off. Larry was trying to get the owner the other day.
Well, that might have been more of a joke than anything else. But if there's one guy that could,
it's Larry Fitzgerald.
It's Larry Fitzgerald because,
But tell the story. He tries, if you're not paying attention, he comes and tackles you. Not only he's throwing you to the ground, but he goes for the legs, and we know when you go to the legs, your body's going down.
Yeah. Well, and we saw it, the Kurt Warner got tackled last year on air, and I can't remember, was it the Thursday night game or the Monday night game, but Warner live on air, and Fitz ran her out, came over and tackled, and the timing was great. Fitz asked Warner after the fact, were you live? And Kurt said, yeah, I was, but made for great television. But look, it happens during these drills. It doesn't happen during 11 on 11 and all that, but Fitz likes to have fun.
Now, I probably shouldn't say this out loud. It hasn't
just between you and I.
It hasn't happened to me in 16 years.
Well, now we've just got to put a bug in Fitz's ear, and maybe we can't get that on camera. That would make a great promo for Cards Cover 2.
Don't tell anybody right now. It's between you and I. Don't go down there and say, hey, Larry, Mike said on the air on Cards Cover 2 that you've never tackled him in 16 years, because I will be the next guy. I hope I can trust you, Grialou.
Be the next guy. You certainly wouldn't be the last guy. Yeah. As we continue here, this special edition of Cards Cover 2 from State Farm Stadium, giving you coverage of Cards Camp 2019. A reminder, the red-white practice coming up on Saturday. Always fun as the team will go, I'm guessing maybe in pads. They are going to be in pads today, tomorrow, and then outdoor practice on Friday, which is closed to the public. And then Saturday's practice, and then Sunday is a day off. But we're getting close to the first preseason game. It's a week from Thursday.
Well, and we got, a football game coming up. I mean, we actually got, I know it's preseason, but at least that's the first game to where next Thursday the Cardinals will be hosting the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, it's...
Now, over the last couple of years, maybe after the Super Bowl run or maybe after the 13-3 season, Cardinals would average about 20,000 fans. I wonder the Murray factor. Now, we've had a lot of fans come out. I know some districts, kids are back in school. Saturday, obviously, I haven't checked the weather. Monsoon season. So get out of the heat and come in here. Free admission, free parking. If you want to check out all the details for the kids zone and everything else, the concessions will be open. azcardinals.com/training camp.
And don't forget the NFL 100 footballs in various locations around the state. That continues until Friday. Several footballs have been found. I believe one of the 3 gold footballs has been found. 3 gold footballs. Those mean you are getting, not season tickets, you are getting preseason tickets to the Raiders game, and then now you become eligible. One fan is going to win season tickets for the 2019 campaign. azcardinals.com for all the information for the NFL 100 footballs that are around the state.
It's been fascinating watching the fans try to find these footballs. And the Cardinals, they give out great clues. They give you a Google map within 100 feet of where the football is, and they try to surround it around the state. But it's kind of like that Pokemon when it was going on. It's like you see these people in your neighborhood, and you're like, why are you in my neighborhood? Now, they put them at a lot of national monuments and different locations, but it's just funny watching these people chase these footballs. But I think it's fantastic that they're giving out 100 footballs for the 100th NFL season.
Yeah, and if you do find one of those football, Cardinals are encouraging fans to tweet out a picture on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram using the hashtag NFL100. Appreciate everyone watching, tuning in here. This special edition of Cards Cover 2 covering practice number 6 of Cards Camp 2019. Cardinals back on the field tomorrow morning, and we'll have continuing coverage here on Cards Cover 2. Special thanks behind the scenes to Jim Omohundro and Grayson Choi. For my partner Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. This has been special coverage of Cards Camp 2019 here on Cards Cover 2.